sit and talk to you about the Ascension process and how I've spent 53 years figuring it all out so that I could explain it to the people who ascend after me. I am the scientist who wrote the book on the Ascension process, but it does need to be rewritten because I was still learning. I hadn't even begun to figure stuff out by the time I wrote that book. But it is a book that when I get out of here, I will be rewriting now that I know better. Um, when I went through my breaking out of the underworld back in October 2019, that was the start of me going through a demagnetization process where I figured out that I had spent from the moment I was born um, catapulting myself out of the darkness that surrounded me. I was surrounded by child abuse, domestic abuse, adultery, lies, gossip, addictions, like that sort of thing. As a kid, I didn't stand a chance, but um, through the course of my ascension, and I believe that the reason why I went through what I went through from October up to this point was because God knew that I was going to be the one to figure it all out so that the mental health industry could re examine the way they look at the psychology of the human mind so that I could save a lot of people from a lot of unnecessary diagnoses, so that I could draw attention to the level of racism in medicine when it comes to um, the lack of understanding of Indigeneity and how Indigenous people and their connection to the planet and the universe is way superior when it comes to healing than anything that modern medicine can bring to the table. If you live on medication, you're slowly dying. I lived on medication. I grew up on medication because I was born with a degenerative spinal disease because when my mum got pregnant with me, she found out she had cervical cancer and she wasn't expected to survive. They wanted her to have an abortion, but being Catholic, she said no. And thank God she did. They said if she had an abortion, she'd live for about 7 years. And she said no. She said that if she was meant to go, if I was meant to go, it was going to be God's will. So when I was born perfectly fine, other than the fact that I was born with a horrendous degenerative spinal disease. Some parts of my spine look like Swiss cheese, and that an arthritic spine. Excuse me, a problem with my calcium. After I was born, apparently all my mum's teeth fell out because I depleted her calcium because I didn't have enough of my own. So, and an extra piece to my stomach, and my irises are slightly, or my pupils are slightly off centre. That's pretty much it. She went on to live for 32 years, so I got 32 wonderful years with a woman who was probably my biggest fear and one of my greatest teachers. My mother was physically abusive because she was brought up in an abusive household. And in the course of my study, the one thing that I noticed with high funks, the high functioning creative empath, is that we've all come from lives where we've literally had to fight to survive. Like, if not from conception, but pretty much from birth. We've had to defend ourselves against like abuse and abusers and trauma and this, that, and the other thing, just to exist as we are. And it is really easy, and more often than not, you don't get anyone going through an ascension process who hasn't made mistakes, because the ascension process is you being given the opportunity to correct all your mistakes, but it requires having to be absolutely brutally honest with yourself. And that's what I've been doing, sitting in my little bubble since I got out of the homeless shelter. Right up until now, I've been sitting in my bubble, like working introspectively, and then having to admit to myself, okay, so that happened because that happened. And when I did that when I was a teenager, that's why this happened. And when I did that as a kid, that's why this happened. And this happened because I needed to heal from this, and that happened because I needed to defend myself from that. And it's been hard because, especially when it comes to having to reflect on who I am as a mother and a woman, and a lot of the opportunities that I've had that could have led to love or relationships since my marriage ended in 2019 were all there to scarily remind me how easy it was going to be for me to fall back into old patterns if I didn't snap out of it. Even with as much work as I'd done on myself in that time between the end of November, I moved into this flat the 29th of November, which is my wedding anniversary to the man who tried to kill me. 2019, 2022. So from the 29th of November 2022 up until now, aren't we there now? Isn't that today? Is the 29th? Oh my God! Isn't today the 29th? I'm sure it is. That's scary. 3 years today. When I moved in here, I had nothing but the clothes on my back, a handbag, and my handbag, my phone, and I managed to get myself a kettle and a toaster. I had no oven, no washing machine, no furniture, no nothing. Like, I had nothing other than what I had carried in my hand. And I had put the call out my last night in the homeless shelter for anyone who had any furniture. And within a couple of hours of me walking into this flat, this place was almost furnished. Yasmin, Annette, Dave, Michelle, God. I'll never forget their names. All these people that just like came out of nowhere and gave me, because I was fully prepared for the fact that I may have to sleep on the floor in this, basically the start of winter, on nothing but my jackets. But yeah, it was like they descended out of nowhere. And even though I didn't have an oven, I had an electric fry pan and that, so I was able, and a crock pot, so I was actually able to have my first home cooked meal in months, months and months and months and months and months. Because remember, I'd been starved, and even with my ex-husband, he was still, controlling what I ate and that. And the men who have swam past my process between moving in here and now, well, since I got locked up and now, yeah, has scared the shit out of me. Because they made me realise that even though I'd worked on myself as a woman, as a mother, who I wanted to be as a wife should I ever get married again, I had learnt nothing when it came to my dignity as a woman, when it came to relationships with men. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean like I treated all, nothing had changed. I was falling back into the toxic vortex again. And it was like, it was a wake up call about what I was prepared to do, be, become as a woman in the next relationship I entered into. So that's where I am now. And even though I'm an Ascension master, even though I'm an Ascension scientist, even though I'm the only occult physicist, the only Ascension scientist in the world, this is what I do. This is what I know. The process that the human soul, that human consciousness goes through from conception to birth and reincarnation and all of that. That's my area of expertise. That's my physics. The whole, biorhythmic energy of the conscious universe is like my whole thing. That's my area, from death, birth, and everything in between, right? And I'm trying to show people how to live their best life now. But it requires having to do a lot of work on yourself and having to be really honest with yourself. I faced the challenges of my toxic mothering when I got that wake up call from my boy when he was 6. Started losing weight in the July of 2015. So we had that conversation in the July of 2015. I think he was like a few months, 6 months away from turning 7. Yeah, thereabouts. Yeah, because he was born in 2009. So, so I had to fix my mothering and who I was as a woman by losing weight and working on myself and taking etiquette classes and that. And even after everything that I thought I'd learned, this whole experience with men has taught me that when it came to love relationships, I hadn't learned anything at all, and that's what I needed to work on. Because the next man I enter into a relationship with, he's going to be it till I take my last breath. So I need to get this right, because he's somebody, he's going to be allowed to come into my personal bubble. And high funks, their personal bubbles is like it's their sanctuary, it's their peace, it's their, like one thing that high funks need to understand is if you're a true high funk, you will never ever be able to meditate. Meditation is actually quite painful, like physically painful for a high funk, because we're having to come down in order to meditate, because meditate requires, center on your breathing and the way that you're sitting. It's requiring a conscious effort to make sure that you're breathing properly and sitting properly and, doing this, that, and the other properly. Whereas high funks, we're writing our novels, we're imagining our plays, we're working on our algorithms, we're working on our binary codes, we're working on our musical compositions and our ideas and our designs and our maths and all of that. So we exist up there. And a soul that is born in the creative realms, that exists in the creative frequency, has to physically change gears to go down into the meditation zone. It's the normie norms that have to rise to go up to meditate. but the high funks have to change their frequency down. And so, it becomes physically obvious on the body. If you set a high funk, a high functioning, creative, empathic mind, if you get them to meditate, you'll find they'll start talking. They get jittery, they can't sit still, they can't concentrate, they can't focus. They'll make noises, they might giggle, they might start to feel really uncomfortable. It becomes physically painful for a high funk to meditate, because it's like how do you force the conscious universe inside a bottle? Like, it's impossible. Forcing expansive energy to try and contain, like, evolutionary expansive conscious energy inside a bottle is impossible. And that's what it's doing. You're taking someone who exists in the realms of the creation frequency and then pulling them down into 3D reality. And so a true high funk will find they will never ever be able to be hypnotized as well. Hypnotism deals with the subconscious mind, and a high funk, an ascended high funk, exists in the creation frequency, which the psychological mind has no access to. It has to go through channels via the brain, like the neuropathic pathways and the central nervous system and the pineal gland and the vagus nerve and all of that. Without that, the psychological mind would have no access to the conscious mind, but it is necessary so that we can psychoanalyze ourselves within, like, the dreamscape and all of that, because a lot of our dreams are a form of self-psychoanalysis, right? So all of these things matter to a high funk, and everything that they dream, everything that they imagine, they turn into inspiration for what it is they create. Whether it's like the next great novel, the next great video game, the next award-winning building, or an algorithm that gets us into space a little bit further, or whatever. They exist in those realms from the minute they're born, and they have to fight to get to the point where they can take everything that they have been imagining and creating since the minute they were born to turn it into something tangible. Which for a high funk, like, the ultimate goal is to have that frequency exist for hundreds of years long after we're gone, like Dickens and Mozart and all of that. That's the ultimate dream for a writer or a musician or actor or whatever, to be remembered for eons. It's not about the fame, it's about having that respect for the work that they've created, because of the fact that people don't understand what a high funk actually has to go through in order to get to that point. And the reason why you don't see them living past a certain age, why they all die of disease and suicide and addictions and that sort of thing, is because they didn't do the work on themselves. They allowed themselves to sit in that suffering, and then you become like toxic and mouldy. And even when you're ascending past all of that and you're doing the work on yourself, it is easy to fall back into the old patterns. And that's what I was realizing with the men. I wasn't. I kept sticking to the same type. I was allowing the same type of shark to swim past my parameter. Whether I actually engaged in conversation with these people or gave them the opportunity or anything like that, like, to get to know me, nothing lasted past a couple of weeks, because as soon as I saw the same toxic patterns in their behaviour and mine, and what I was allowing to have happen and that sort of thing. It was a wake up call, man. And the thing is, when you're on an ascending path, who you have in your life matters. They're either going to be a master maker or a master manipulator, but both are there to help put you on the path. But you have to be strong enough and aware enough to recognize the signs of the master manipulator. The master makers are the ones who are always there, that are, they take the knocks and the hits and the blows that you throw at them because they know you're going through a process. They're there for you anyway. They let you get it out, and they're there for you anyway. They're the light in the dark. They're the ones that raise your head up. They're the ones who give you that inspiration and that courage to keep going and keep looking forward no matter what. They're there for the highs, they're there for the lows, the setbacks, the leaps forward. They're there for it all. They don't leave your side regardless of anything. Whereas the master manipulators are the ones that every time you take a few steps forward, there's criticisms, I'm doing this for your own good, it's only because I care, I'm only saying this because I love you. Are you sure about this? Oh, I don't know, I've got a bad feeling about this. Oh, I've got a bad feeling about her, I've got a bad feeling about him. Like the ones that put doubt in your mind, the ones who make the little criticisms, they might make jokes about it, using sort of sarcasm and all of that to get you to second guess your choices. And, a high funk will know exactly what it's like to go without food, to struggle to make ends meet. You will know poverty, you will know suffering, and it is because when God promises, after you've gone through the ascension process, once it's over, once you no longer have to go through the trial by fire, which will take your entire lifetime, you it will be very rare for you to find this level of guru status or legend status in your career in your 30s. Most of us don't kind of start reaching that level until we're in our 40s and 50s. Like, where you're guaranteed, long after you're gone, people are going to know your name for your work. That's usually in your 40s and 50s, because you've got kids to have, you've got relationships to screw up. You don't sort of start really growing up as a human until you're in your 40s and 50s. And I've done a complete 160 when it comes to what I will and won't tolerate in any of my relationships, let alone love relationships. But I've also let go of what I thought I wanted, what I thought I liked, what I thought I would ever accept. I never thought I would ever give anyone older than me the opportunity to try it on, you get to know me, sort of thing. I had a discussion with my niece Amber about it before she died, and she was the one that said to me, go for it. She said, like, you won't regret it. She said, I'm telling you now, Auntie, you're not going to regret it. So I kind of, the kind of man that I'm looking at now is the complete opposite of anything I thought I wanted when I entered into relationships. And that's the thing you need to understand when you're going through the ascension process. Who you're paired with will be the complete opposite of who you start out attracting yourself to when you first enter into the dating and love and relationship field. Because you're searching for whatever it was you were drawn to in your mother's womb. And if your mother was around toxic people and abuse or addictions or violence or anything like that, it's exactly what you're going to be drawn to when you start dating. So the ascension process is you been forced to be psychologically aware of the path that you're allowing yourself to go down, because your psychological mind actually controls your instincts. And how fast you react to your instincts will be all reliant on how quickly you listen to your intuition. So, the hardest part of the ascension process is having to be honest with yourself and admitting that you're not perfect, and nobody's perfect. Even Jesus wasn't perfect. People can argue the point, but he wasn't. He had a temper on him. He turned people away. He wasn't perfect. He used to get exhausted and he used to yell at people, but that's typical Aries. When Aries is tired and they're grumpy, they snap at people. And Jesus is in Aries. So, the other thing that you need to understand is that when a high funk isn't in the realms of creativity, their soul starts to die. So if a painter doesn't have access to the canvas and paint, or the pencil and paper, or the pen and paper, or their camera, or, if the writer doesn't have access to their writing tools, or the programmer to his laptop or anything like that, if that's taken away from them, their soul begins to die, because they were born to create. A high functioning creative empath is born in the creative realms anyway. So to be removed from that is like being ripped away from source, ripped away from the womb before you've been allowed to develop into a baby. It's like a death process. And if it's being controlled, if they have managers that are constantly making them change their look, their music, what they've written, like editing bits out, that where they're having arguments over it and that sort of thing, that's literally soul destroying to a high funk. If they're not being heard, if people aren't understanding what they're saying, how they're expressing themselves, that sort of stuff is really, really frustrating, because you're having to pull yourself down in order to exist amongst people who just don't reside on the same frequency as you, and it's physically painful. It will show on your body. So you have to be the one to be consciously aware that your choices and how you decide to do things matter long into the future. What you decide now is going to have long-term effects into the future. So if you constantly enter into bad relationships, or you're having to pull yourself down to be around people who are physically painful on your soul, these are red flags where your conscious mind is saying you need to re-examine all of this, because you're heading down the wrong path and it might be something you regret later on. And so you have to be, your physical body has to be in perfect alignment with your spiritual body. If the two aren't in alignment, you're going to constantly keep going down roads where you hit brick walls, or where you're being forced to look back and reflect on things that you haven't worked on yet. Karmic loops. Things keep happening. We repeat cycles, in relationships included, over and over and over and over again, when lessons haven't been learned. And this is what I've been working on since the 29th of November. I came in here and I just started reflecting, like, on the choices I was making and the people I was allowing myself to be around, platonic and, potential. Although there was only a couple of potentials, like it wasn't. But see, the thing is, I'm not proud of myself with any of it. Looking back now, if I could have changed everything, I wouldn't have dealt with any of them, other the one who kept me alive when I was locked up. He literally kept me alive, just the conversations. Literally kept me alive. everybody else were lessons in what I'm prepared to put up with and what I'm not prepared to put up with. And it's been a long, hard, brutally honest journey, but it's been one that's been completely necessary because it's not that I have high standards in who I want him to be, it's that I have high standards in what I'll allow him to turn me into once we're together. And if he's not someone who's uplifting, if he's not someone who's a master maker, then I'm not interested. Um, you have to make the conscious effort to walk away from people are causing you nothing but harm, even if they're family members, even if they're work colleagues. You're in this life to learn the lessons that you need to learn so that by the time you die, everything you have created is going to be remembered forever in the annals of history. Like Mozart, like Charles Rene Mackintosh, like Lowry, like Van Gogh, like all of them, Tesla, Einstein, Faraday, all of them, all of the greats, all of the ones that we all know, even now, even kids today know, even now, and they've been dead for hundreds of years, some of them. Um, God says that when you go through your ascension, and trust me when I say 99.9% of people who go through an ascension either were non-believers or gave up on religion. I gave up. And then I was as big as heathen. I literally developed a science to try and prove that God wasn't real and walked straight into becoming his right-hand woman. so even I didn't see that coming. My mum did though when I was 16, and I told her I was walking away from being a Catholic. She said, "You'll be back." I said, "I'm off to find if God is real." And she said, "You'll be back." And I said, "Yeah, I don't think so." That was when I was 16, and now look, he's like, I'm like his most loyal woman. So I'm his right-hand woman. So, and I've friggin' risked everything to defend my relationship with him too. That's what the lawyer said, that when all of this that happened to me goes to court, she said it's basically putting God on trial. God and racism on trial. So, yeah, but God says when, when you're going through an ascension, at the end of it, when you've finished your trial by fire, when you've had gone through your Job trial, and you master your virtues and master your 7 virtues and add hope and faith, not only basically do you become like a legend, like exalted even in the heavens sort of things, but that's just biblical nerd talk for becoming like a legend, a historical legend, like a guru, or known to be like a master in your field. That's pretty much what that means. So yeah, when you master your 7 virtues and you add hope and faith, you are guaranteed supernatural powers at the end. And one of the incredible things about the supernatural is that it does, when you're going through an ascension, is it does literally give you a DNA upgrade, gives you the best qualities of your most highest respected ancestors, like genetically, so you'll suddenly gain wisdoms of things in that you couldn't possibly have known growing up and all that sort of thing, because you go through a DNA upgrade. You unlock aspects of your genetic self from ancestors who went on to do like incredible great things, like with like philanthropy or in the arts, or see with me, it's all my Egyptian ancestors, Haroon al-Rashid, I was just talking about him. I just found out that my grandpappy, Haroon al-Rashid, who was like, he pretty much ruled like North Africa and the Middle East and that. He was Iranian. I've all that philanthropy, the love of science, the love of art and music and all that, it's all been unlocked. And yeah, so I've gone through like a massive DNA upgrade. And you go through a DNA upgrade, you de-age, your body becomes so pure that you can't stand anything that isn't organic anymore. Like it's the most incredible feeling because you become like almost like a pure atom that has the potential to become anything you want it to be. And that's the supernatural power that gets unlocked in you. From what I understand, we're like X-Men. Everyone's powers are different. And I say I'm like Professor X, and my school's going to be, for my mutants. The Amber Wilkinson school will be for my mutants. But I'm also Magneto. I'm also a bit of Storm. I like to say I'm Storm because, I can mess about with the weather and that being like the granddaughter to Papatūānuku. But I was just watching a video again on scary mysteries, and it caught my attention because at the end, I think it's either the second to last story, the second to last bit, or the last bit, where he's talking about how this New York cop became known for his work as a demonologist, and how he was trying to get the church and the police department, or the church and was it the church and the not the church and the police department, the church and the hospitals or something, the to work with the church to recognise that some psychological issues are supernatural and not psychological. That there's parts of psychology that are dealing in the realms of the supernatural that like psychiatrists and psychologists and that can't deal with. They're not equipped to deal with it. It needs to be left to like the churches and people like me. And I thought, oh, that's interesting because that's what I've been saying. I just made that video, was it the last one, where I was saying that. So I'll put a link in the description box below. So even the Catholic Church in that is trying to get people to see that there's things that we deal with on a psychological level that medicine and shrinks and that can't deal with because it's dealing in the realms of the spiritual, which is supernatural, not to be confused with esoteric. It drives me out the wall. The esoteric has no, like that's chakras and stuff. There's no scientific evidence that any of that stuff is even real. Like the way that people misunderstand this stuff is scary, but it's what I'm here for. So yeah, so I'll put a link in the description box below, but I did find that interesting. Now the thing is, you don't just suddenly wake up and think, oh, I'm going to have an ascension today. You're chosen. You're given the opportunity to have an ascension. And it starts when you're in your 20s, and you're not going to realise that until you're in your 40s. You're born ascending. There is a pattern. Everyone who goes through the opportunity to be offered an ascension, there's like a pattern. We all come from the exact same lives. We've all got the exact same experiences. We've all had to deal with the exact same thing. Told through different stories, but we'll all come from poverty. We all know what it's like to go home. We all know what it's like to be locked up, accused of things we didn't do, being bullied, being misunderstood by family, all of that sort of thing, abuse, addictions, whether it's ourselves or around us. Like we all come from the same thing. Most of us either leave school really early or hate school, hate college, hate all of that sort of stuff because it's forcing us. It's like trying to force a square peg into a round hole. We're not born to blend in. We're born to stand out because we're the ones that are leaving a vibration and the frequency that is going to resonate for hundreds of years with what it is we create, our songs, our music, our books, our whatevers. Everyone forever is going to know who Mozart is. Everyone forever is going to know who Michael Jackson is. And these are all people, Van Gogh and all that, these are all people who are going to be remembered in history forever, who had the worst lives, who had it really hard. Charles Dickens, oh my God, his life. Edgar Allan Poe and all that, like it's all relative when it comes to the ascension process, but none of them had to die as young as they did, or the way they did, or for the reasons they did. It's just that they didn't have someone like me trying to figure it out. They got put in places like Bedlam because they couldn't figure it out. I mean, women used to get put into mental asylums back in the day for having PMS. That's how screwed up the mental health medicine, whatever you want to call yourself, is. So, yeah, so I've been sitting in my little bubble, which is about to be popped, where the walls are about to come down and people are about to see my face and what I look like now and everything I'm about to step into. And this was the last thing I had to work on. Because as well, I'm still trying to save my boys. And I want people to understand as well that in my last life, I 1,000,000,000,000,000% do not hold my children responsible for anything that my ex-husband and I have put them through. I'm proud that they're standing by each other because that's the one thing I told them to do. And I took their hits and their knocks and their kicks and their punches because deep down they know I'm the only one they could take their pain and frustration out on, and I wouldn't hold them responsible for it. We've all had to go through a process in our separation, and I've taken on board a lot of stuff they said. I've defended myself for the stuff that I know their father lied to them about. I know how good my ex-husband is at making you think that what you know and think and feel and see as evidence is wrong. You can hold factual stuff right up to him and he will convince you very well that what you're seeing and what you're reading is being misunderstood and misinterpreted. He is the king of gaslighting. He is the narcissistic king of all the domestic abusing tyrants. He doesn't lay a hand on you. He lays his mind on you. And he was the blueprint of everything that I have avoided ever since. When Martin left me for the groomer and the paedophile, because only me, it it slowly made me open my eyes to who it was I was dealing with my husband, my ex-husband. But he was good at covering it all up and making me think that the stuff I was starting to see was in my own head, which is why he was so able to convince people I was nuts. And then it turns out everything that I said in that police report about Katie and Santara, and that was 100% correct. Santara herself admitted to her relationship with Chris. She even defended him. A famous YouTube tarot reader defended and protected child groomers and child abusers and sexual predators, and just so that she could have him. And nobody went to the police and said, oh yeah, no, we were in a relationship. She was telling the truth. Nobody did, because then it would have meant they all had to admit they lied. And the thing is, when you go through an ascension process, you're going to face things like homelessness, you're going to face things like starvation, going hungry, not knowing where the next meal's coming from. You're going to get accused of things. You might have been locked up for things. You might have been forced to have psychiatric evaluations. All of that. You're going to go through all of it. It is a trial by fire. You are literally born stepping out of hell. And when you do that and you come out the other side, not only have you stepped out of hell, but the flames have purified your soul. And when you burn all that toxicity and darkness away, from the minute you're born, God then rewards you with the gift of life. And then you start looking younger, you feel younger, you have more energy, you don't get sick anymore. Your gifts and your skills and your abilities come online full time. With me, I'm like that when I don't have to deal with pain. It's just, unfortunately, I'm allergic to everything. Pain relief, antibiotics. I can't even have like anti-inflammatory gels on my skin because it gives me asthma. I get asthma because my body is that pure now. Every cell in my body is brand new. Every cell in my body, because you shed every 7 years, I haven't this every cell in my body doesn't know the touch of a man. So because I've kept myself that pure, so that when I do give myself to the one I'm going to spend the rest of my life with, um, he gets someone pure. Like, it's all virgin cells, so it's pure virginal cells, and he'll get that. I can't give him my actual virginity, but I can give him my virgin cell self. You know, my DNA will only hold his inside my body, other than my children's, for until I die. Um, because I wanted to, my boys, when my husband Martin left, and I was like, oh, I guess this means I'm going to have to get back out on the dating thing. It was actually my sons in 2019 said to me, do you mind if you don't date men? Can you just like maybe get to know some? They said they can look but not touch, but don't date and don't like be in physical contact. Like don't be a thought. My son said, because that would bring him great shame. And so they said, can you promise to keep yourself until you find the one that you want to spend the rest of your life with? And I said, yeah, I promise, and I kept my promise. But like I said yesterday, I actually haven't. The last person I had physical sexual interactions with is the one who tried to kill me, the father of my children, 2015. So yeah, so I kept myself pure. It's part of my test of faith. It's part of my loyalty. It's me proving, because I'm a Scorpio, and like I was saying, I was very promiscuous before I got married. I loved sex. I loved having lots of it, and not necessarily wanting to be tied down to men and that sort of thing, as a teenager in that year. And then I fell in love at 20, got married at 21. I've slept with two men ever since. I'm 53 now. But my pledge to my boys was also eventually my pledge to God, that I would keep my legs closed. I wouldn't let a man kiss me, hold my hand, touch my body, um, until the man of my dreams came along, my moon king, um, and I would be giving him something pure, as long as my pledge, to show my determination, to save the children. So it's also, yeah, I do it for God as well. I'm married to Christ. I'm like the bride of Christ at the moment. I'm like the occult version of a nun, but I'm allowed to marry and have kids and and that sort of thing. So yeah, so I made a pledge to God that if He lets me build my foundation and save the children and help the children with everything that I know, I in turn will have faith and keep my faith when it comes to getting justice and keep my legs closed and give myself to only one man. And that would be the man that I would marry and, you know, spend the rest of my life with. But it means having to differentiate between what I'm willing to accept and what I'm not willing to accept. And I know what I'm not willing to accept, and I've walked away from it all. I know what I'm willing to accept now, and so does he, because I know he's watching, taking notes. He doesn't need to take notes. I know he's watching. He's obsessed, but he's got work to do, because whoever I end up with, he's got work to do. Because he's not physically in my life yet. You know, I haven't heard his voice. I haven't seen his face. He's not physically in my life. That means he's got work to do, and that is going to mean he's probably still got things in his life he needs to let go of, because he has to raise his frequency in order to reach me, because he's the buffalo and I'm the dragon. So he's the ground eyes and I'm the sky eyes. I'm the eyes in the stars. So he's got to raise his vibration, and that means he's obviously around things or people or whatever that are still holding him down, anchoring him down. He's still surrounded by darkness. So yeah, he's got to be the one to let go. He's got to jump into the light. But it's all done. Ascensions are all by choice and require strength and will and patience. But patience is one of the virtues you have to master. So don't let anybody think that they just woke up at 20 and they've suddenly ascended. A lot of spiritual awakening symptoms, people are trying to claim are ascension symptoms, but when I first came out of the underworld back in 2019, I confused some of the symptoms as well. But I had only, when I made those videos, which are up on my channel, I was still like in shock, not realizing that I hadn't even been struck by lightning yet. That was 2019. What was coming is everything I've just come out of now. Talk about being in shock. It's taken me this long to sit in my bubble of protection and peace to stop my head from spinning from everything that I just got thrown out of. You know, when I got out of when I got locked up to when I was in the homeless shelter to moving in here. Today's the 29th. I think today's the anniversary of the day I moved in here. Because it was my wedding anniversary when I would have married the anniversary of the man that almost killed me. The whole reason for it all, the father of my children. So yeah, I don't hold my children responsible at all. I'm trying to save them. I'm trying to give them the best life to make up for the one that my ex and I forced them to have to go through. But the thing is, if the NHS, if the West Yorkshire Police, if social services, if the judge, if the doctors, if my family, if the politicians, if everybody had to listen to me, the second I called the police, the second I called 999 and said, I think my ex has done something to poison me, and she goes, well, it's his house. Like, technically, you're the one that has to move, blah, blah, blah. If his name's, like, she didn't even... And then a few hours later, he called the police to say I was suicidal. If I had been taken seriously with that first 999 call, which was a couple of hours before his, my kids and I wouldn't have had any of this trauma, because he would have been arrested. He'd be in jail. He would have been the one locked up. But the thing is, it was when I got locked up, I even found out that I was a victim of domestic abuse. I didn't even know. He was so good at getting in my head, I didn't even know I was a victim of domestic abuse. I'm convinced I had like Stockholm syndrome because I kept making excuses, even though I hated it. And I used to pray to God every night to like, please let me get out of here, let me hurry up and get justice from, because I was planning on suing Rocio and the Air Force and all that for the hacking in my phone, because I caught them hacking my phone. I've got the screenshots and everything. Like they rang my phone and then the number got shut down. But they did hack my phone. So that's what I thought I was originally suing everyone over, not realising it was going to end up at Elon Musk and people on the Epstein list and the British government and all of that. Like I didn't know that I was going to be walking into the Queen Elizabeth codes. So a lot of things had to happen, including me getting locked up, and that's one of the things you need to understand. It doesn't matter what hell you're put through when you're going through an ascension. Find the lesson, equate it. If you find the lesson and see if you can trace it back to something you might have done even when you were a child, even when you were a teenager. Because even though children are pure and innocent, if children commit sins as children, they will have to pay for them as adults. So even if you steal a sweetie, even if you like steal $1 out of like your nana's wallet or something like that, even if you like do a thing as a kid, because if you're doing that, you're around people who have raised you in an environment that taught you that. You know why they say you're not born racist, you're bred racist? It's the same thing. You're not born to steal, you're not born to lie, you're not born, you're in a toxic environment where you're taught it and it's allowed to happen and it's allowed to fester in that. But God doesn't punish children, not usually, not unless it's really bad. He will wait until you're older because he's given you a lifetime to make up for what you've done. So when things are going wrong, even if you've been locked up, I swear to God, if you know you're innocent, stand in your truth and find the lesson. Why have I been locked up? Why is this happening? Not the whole, why is this happening to me? Like, okay, Father, why is this happening to me? He put Job through it. He put Daniel through it. He's put a lot of people through these trials by fire. Find the lesson and then see if you can trace it back to something that you've done. If you can trace it back to something you've done, it's a karmic debt you have to accept, but it doesn't mean that you can't defend yourself from the accusations of what you've been put through. Don't allow anyone to lie in your name or defame you or slander you or anything like that if you know what they're saying isn't true. But you might have to be honest and say you're being forced to defend yourself, you're being contained, or this is happening because you have to learn a lesson from something you did when you were younger. And that being locked up isn't a punishment, it's part of the lesson. It might be that you need the isolation. It might mean that you're going to meet someone like I did who are going to teach you things that change your trajectory, that change the way you see the situation, that changes the way you handle the situation. I didn't know I was a victim of domestic abuse. I didn't know that I could bring my ex up on charges of historical sexual assault. I didn't know what he was doing was wrong. I just wanted it to go away. I wanted him to stop doing what he was doing to me in the middle of the night. I just wanted it to go away, but I didn't know that that was illegal because we weren't married. I didn't know it was illegal. I didn't know it was a crime until I got locked up. There were things that I had to pay attention to while I was locked up that has turned into everything that I am right now. So just because you get locked up, even though it might be unfair, God's putting you through it for a reason. Your ancestors, if you don't believe in God, you're being put through the test for a reason. But if you don't believe in God by that point, you're probably not going through an ascension because you find God in the trenches. I found him in the trenches. Jesus was there. I found Jesus in the trenches, and he led me straight back into the arms of God, because it gets to the point when you go through an ascension where your faith in God is proven over and over and over and over again, where you start witnessing miracles, where you start performing miracles that like defy the laws of physics and reason and everything, because that's God working through you. That's the power of the Holy Spirit working through you. And I'm not even religious. I'm a reverend, but I'm an Indigenous reverend. It's just that I'm talking in a language that everybody understands, because it's the only way that a lot of people could hear me, because I speak Dolphin. My oracle, they call me, my brother Sir Raphael and Odin, and that they call me Delphine, which is Dolphin, the oracle of Delphine, the oracle of Dolphin, the oracle of water, basically, because I'm like a water baby. I'm a water dragon. So, well, I was born a water dragon. So, but all dragons are born in the underworld. I need to. We come from the bowels of the earth. We are forged in the molten lavas of the core of the earth. So yeah, and then we ascend to our positions. And I ascended to a water dragon, which in the tale of Lucian's dragon, she's Princess Anahita. The water dragon becomes Princess Anahita. She gets her land legs, kind of like the Little Mermaid, but not. She's a Undine, water goddess, a Persian water goddess. So, but see what I'm saying? That's the mind of a high functioning creative empath. We turn everything into a story. We turn everything into art. We turn everything into the realms that we live in. We turn into tangible things down in the 3D. We have to come down, and we have to be around people who do not get that frequency. So my foundation, the Foundation Arts and Entertainment Academy, I call it FIRE, is going to be that environment for my kids and my staff in that. It'll be a place where everyone can come and just be free to express themselves and be. My foundation is basically going to be my bubble, like my little crystal ball, like a snow globe. My foundation will be like a slow globe where we'll just like everyone's in a little creative protective bubble, and everyone's the same and no one's weird, and no one's a freak or a dork or a nerd or a weirdo or you know spooky or scary or odd or anything like that. We're all going to be there making movies and musicals and theatre productions and video games and TV shows. And I've been working on a couple of my voices for kids' cartoons. I've been kind of writing. There's the superhero toy league with Space Cowboy and all that in it. And also, I want to do one. I haven't named it yet, but it's going to be like a cross between Chuggington and Thomas the Tank Engine. So I've been working on a couple of my little kiddie voices, because because writing and creating and doing my kiddie voices, that's why I want my little recording studio in my house, other than doing my radio shows, because I'm not always going to be able to go into town, depending on my pain. I have to take into account I might have to live in a country where my pain relief isn't legal. It's not legal here either. It's expensive. It's not something that I'm guaranteed to have access to. I don't want to get into trouble. I have to be very careful, but I'm hoping I can go to a country where it's legal, or where it's at least the next door country is legal. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to do much work. My creative flow is pinched when I'm in pain, but that's because pain is a 3D physical reaction. So, yeah, so anyway, I just wanted to put that all out there for people who are pretty sure they're going through an ascension process. There's a lot to take on board. There's a lot to what I just said. Oh, sorry, speaking of pain. I just pulled on my scar above my belly button. My belly button, because when my belly button rotted away and went all like stinky and yucky, it shrunk my belly button in half. So I've got a teeny tiny little belly button, because when my stomach finally was able to heal, the skin that got rotted away obviously left like big gaping hole. So when the skin grew back, it gave me a teeny tiny little belly button, like it's like a half a belly button. So, yeah. Anyway, I've got a scar on my shoulder from where he stabbed me in my sleep with that dirty needle, and I required emergency surgery. So I'm covered in wounds, I'm covered in war wounds, I'm covered in scars. You will come out of this covered in scars, physical, mental, whatever, but you have faith that the right people are going to help you come out of it. And when you do come out of it, I promise you, you come out of it not regretting a single thing, because of who it makes you at the end of it, because of what you create, because of what you've developed, because of what you become at the end of it. You suddenly get it, and it's like, okay, well, I mean, it was crap while I was going through it, but now that I'm coming out the other end, or now that I'm at the end of it, like, I get it now, so okay. And then, because then what happens is, one of the very last symptoms of an ascension that you get before you're no longer a student, where you get to be labelled as the master or the guru or the developer of or creator of or inventor of. Once you get that blue plaque stamp sort of kind of approval in history, it makes you grateful for the experience. It makes you lighter, and it makes you want to talk about it. Because you want to just like, when Jesus, the Sermon on the Mount, it makes you want to climb to the rooftop. It makes you want to stand on the tallest mountain and shout out to people, this is what you need to do to save yourself. And when you save yourself, you save the world. So, yeah, the last symptom before you're no longer a student is you feel this need to want to talk about your journey, talk about your process. Um, like you'll record yourself making documentaries about your process. Um, you see a lot of people making videos on YouTube and their TikToks and all that, where they're talking about, this is how I made this dress, or this is how I paint, or this is how I do this, that, and the other. That's them stepping into the potential of becoming the next great person in their field. Um, Once they find their voice and they allow it to get louder, if they allow themselves to go through that process, um, the sky's the limit. The sky's not even the limit, the stars are the limit. Becoming only legends become stars. There you go. So, the legend of Brehena Saithusa, my long road to ascension. I will sit down and rewrite that book. It needs rewritten. I thought I knew everything back then. Little did I know. Boy, little did I know. When I wrote that book, I hadn't even fully admitted to myself that God was real. The cover to that book was the place where I found the stones in that I was turning into amulets, where it was like this beam of light came out of the sky, like it was like the sky parted. This beam of light came down and shone this light down, and it blew me away. And I said to the boys, I think I've just had a religious experience. My son Thomas took a photo of it, and I used it on the cover of my Long Road to Ascension, because I knew there and then that I just had a really profound religious experience. I just had refused to admit where it was coming from. But then in the end, I couldn't deny it anymore. The science kept coming to the fact that there was a God, but I had to see him in a different way, because it wasn't comparable to what I knew him to be growing up as a Catholic. Because you have to find God, like with the devil and all of that. You have to let Jesus and God in, They can knock at your door all you want, but you have to be the ones to let them in. And yeah, he was bashing that door down, and in the end, I couldn't deny his existence. It's just that I only knew him from what I'd been told he was from my Catholic upbringing. But once I saw who he really was, based on who my Egyptian ancestors knew him to be, Atom, everything changed, and then my science fell into place. And then I was able to start decoding the Bible and seeing the real message and what was really going on. And yeah, changed everything. So now I'm teaching it all to you guys. And if I can take what I've been through to save the lives of other high funks, I call you high funks for short, high functioning creative empaths. Um, I just call you high funks. If I can save the lives of high funks, and if I can save the lives of children and start rescuing children from the human traffickers and all of that, with the little safe houses at the back and that, then everything I went through is worth it. 100%. And I gave myself over to that a long time ago. When I saw where all of this was headed, I was just like, just Jesus, take the wheel. We've crashed a few times. But I was wearing a helmet. And I was saved by the airbags. I was born with two big, massive airbags. I'm just kidding. So, yeah. So I'm going to go now and have a coffee. But it just, yeah. I just had to put that out there because my process is going to be everybody else's process who comes after me. So this is like a heads up. This is what you can expect. This is why you're going through some of the things you're going through that you might not be able to explain why you're going through them. But I can explain it to you. And if you accept the process, always take the moral high ground. Be honest with yourself, like brutally honest with yourself, and accept that this is part of the process and stand in your truth and like don't lie or compromise or anything like that. You're going to end up valuing your experience when you get to the point where you will never have to worry about money again, where you will not be able to walk down the street with anybody not recognising you. You won't be able to go to the supermarket anymore, or in the very least, you'll never have to worry about money again, and people are going to be falling all over themselves to hang on your every word or to invest in your product or to work with you or whatever. When you get to that point, you're going to realise why you went through it all was so that you could savour the experience and appreciate everything you've got. I recommend everybody who believes they're going through an ascension, especially a high functioning creative empath, I recommend you start getting into Stoicism. Stoic philosophy will help you understand this process more than you will ever know. I personally took my lessons from Marcus Aurelius, but you know, Plato and Diogenes and Socrates and Epictetus and all of that, you end up getting your mind blown. It's like they know exactly what you're going through. It helps you draw strength when you're needing answers if you can't find it in like your Bible or in scripture or anything like that, if you don't believe in God. Although, like I said, if you're going through an ascension process and you're at this point where you're understanding what I'm talking about, if you haven't found God in your life by this point, then you're probably not going through an ascension. It's karma, or so because the whole point of you being chosen for an ascension is to prove the existence of God. God does it. God pulls off these miracles of man to prove that his existence is real, but that people need to wake up and understand the way they're seeing him isn't correct. And when you see him correctly, you end up like an X-Man, like me. So I'm going to go now. I'm going to have my coffee. I need to deal with my pain. So, yeah, I'm going to go and I shall speak to you later. Ka kite anō. Mwah.